Reality of life right now is that resilience is no longer enough. Man, it used to be that if you were resilient, tenacious, that was enough. And Anne Grady, you are here today to share with us what's possible once you accept resilience is no longer enough.
That's right. Resilience is wonderful. We're all resilient. If you are listening, you have survived the worst thing that has ever happened to you. So you're resilient by nature. But bouncing back is survival. And we want to figure out how to grow forward with intention. It's just like you always talk about, Bridget. How can we be intentional about the life we're living so that we're not
Right.
just surviving the one we have, but we're actually enjoying it?
You really are well positioned to have this conversation with me. You're a published author of Evolvability, Growing Forward When Life Goes Sideways. And I think that you really dig into this particular subject in that book. When resilience isn't enough, what do you do when you're tested?
Well, and I've spent, the better part of 25 years working with organizations, whether it's speaking at events or facilitating C-suite meetings or training sessions. But it was really my personal life that drove me needing not only the skills to bounce back, but also how to take everything that had happened in my experience and use it to get stronger and smarter. And I think right now people are so tired. My reason for writing this is, I've spent, my son Evan is now 23 years old and severely mentally ill, autistic, learning disabilities, developmental delays. His life has been a lot. And in the middle of it all, I got sick. I had a tumor in my salivary gland that resulted in facial paralysis, and it was a whole mess. And through it all, people kept telling me like, oh, you're so resilient. And I thought, okay, great. I'm still standing, but there's more to life than just not falling down. How do we adapt and grow as part of the process? So that's where evolvability came from. And it all started with a camping trip. I would have rather had a colonoscopy than go on.
That's a interesting story. Do you not like camping in general, or was it just the particular terms of this camping trip that made it so unappealing?
So I'm a Jewish girl from New Jersey originally.
Okay.
I didn't camp. I had never been camping. The idea of camping was so foreign, and it was my birthday, and my girlfriends were like, that's it. We're taking you camping for your birthday. And in my head, I'm like, if you love me, you'll take me to a Four Seasons and get me a massage. But I went, and much to my dismay, I had the most wonderful time. And it was so defining for me because we create these labels for ourselves. Right? I'm not an athletic person. I'm not a creative person. I'm not a morning person. And the feedback that we get throughout our lives, and mine was always, oh, and sports aren't your thing. Athletics aren't your thing. Those labels that we carry get really comfortable until they become a cage, until they define us. And so for me, this small little camping trip turned into the beginning of my evolution, where I now live on, I call it a ranchito. I live on a small ranch in Texas with donkeys and cows and a riding lawnmower named Marilyn Monroe. And I absolutely love it. But it was only because I went kicking and screaming. And what we're finding right now in corporate world and in our country and around the world is change is really hard, and it's scary for the human brain. And anytime something is uncertain, we default to being in a state of threat. So what if we could change that? What if we could build the skill set so when everything's going to hell in a handbasket, we can take back some of that control? And that's what this entire journey of evolvability has been.
Out of curiosity, what an insightful group of friends. So they must have seen something in you where they must have had a thought at one point of, we got to get Anne into some nature. She needs to reconnect with nature. There was something where they knew, I'm going to call it off grid, that your soul was crying out to be off grid. And they wanted to be there with you to just see what would happen.
Yeah. I wish I could say it was that insightful. I think my girlfriends loved camping and they wanted to share it with me. And I was under so much stress with my son that the thought of taking a weekend away and leaving him to be managed and his care to be managed was so overwhelming. I didn't realize I had started saying no to so many things. My world really started to shrink. And I think anyone who's a parent, especially a parent of a child with special needs, can understand that isolating, lonely feeling, because it's not like a child that you can take out to a store and they're like, oh, can I have some gum? And you say, not right now. And they say, okay. And they keep going. Mine would pull down an end cap and threaten to murder a store full of people. And it became so hard to leave the house, let alone think of my own enjoyment and hobbies on top of it, that my whole world started to shrink. And I realized if I didn't learn how to adapt and intentionally evolve through it, I was going to stay stuck and it wasn't the kind of life I wanted. So fortunately, all of these things that I talk about and write about are skills. You're not born knowing how to
That's
adapt.
right.
It's a skill and you can learn.
You can learn. And even if you're good, which, as you said, everyone listening has evolved and sustained themselves and survived until today, right? But if you would like to get better, you're able to get better.
And
You
not
can
just even
practice and learn and adapt and grow.
And not just get better, but get easier. We create so much friction by resisting the unknown. Whereas if we build our tolerance for that discomfort and view it as stretching and growing and learning instead of the natural inclination toward our gravitating toward everything's going to be horrible and our negativity bias and magnifying the what ifs, it can be a beautiful, fun process. You just have to let go of some of the things. You have to unlearn some things before you can learn new ones.
Well, Anne, could you share with everyone, because you are right, you've built a phenomenal career, keynote speaker, and as you said, working with groups and organizations and corporations and C-suite, published author. But you mentioned briefly this really was connected to what you had faced in your personal life. And a lot of it revolved around the birth and the infancy and toddlerdom with your son. Share some of what you went through that really tested your ability to evolve.
Well, gosh, there's so much to unpack there. Our house was a war zone for many days. We had a child who didn't understand what was happening to him, why he was so angry. I mean, at 2 years old, he was like virtually kicking holes in doors. He had this crazy strength. And my husband, his father left when he was 18 months old. So I had a new consulting career and I'm getting on these big stages, but at home, everything was crumbling. And at 4 months old, Evan was diagnosed with mono. So now I had a new consulting career and I had to find a nanny to come be in our home and have to find a way to afford it and do all of the things. And I just felt like I was drowning every day. I couldn't even catch a breath of air. And I was reading all of these self-help books, right? About like, just think positive. Look at the silver lining, focus on gratitude. And while all of those things are proven to work and are very, very helpful, if you're so buried in a hole that you can't even find a breath to take to get out of it, and someone's telling you, look at the silver lining, you just want to throat punch them because you can't even find sunlight, let alone gratitude, right? So I think we've created this happiness culture where if something's not okay, we're like, what's wrong with you? You're supposed to be happy all the time. Instead of recognizing happiness as an emotion like any other emotion. And it happens in these micro moments. And in those moments, you savor it and it's amazing. It's wonderful. You appreciate it. But then you go to the next moment and it might not be that way. And that's why the first pillar in this entire book is learning how to read, recognize, and regulate your emotional state, because you can't regulate anybody else if you're dysregulated, but you also can't think clearly and you can't manage uncertainty and you can't bounce back. So the first step is really getting clear on how am I showing up to my conversations and my meetings and my living room, and am I behaving like the kind of person I would want to be around?
And you were doing that in remarkably challenging times, because it did not instantly, from what you've shared with me, it didn't just get better after he was 18 months old and father left and you're launching your consulting career. And all of that.
And I was diagnosed with clinical depression at the age of 19, right? So I was dealing with very real, overwhelming grief and fear and sadness and physical danger and emotional abuse and all of those things. And people are like, well, how did you turn that from that to a successful career? And it's like been 25 years of slow, subtle shifts and changes in behavior. And it's not like I have it all figured out, Bridget. I mean, we're all in this experience together. And any author, speaker, expert who tells you they have figured it out,
run away.
Run away. No,
That's right.
They're
Run
still,
in the other direction.
It's like going to the therapist and knowing that they still fight with their partner because we're all just human, right?
Yes. I still have unfinished items on my to-do list, and I still have messes I need to clean up. Yeah, just because you have a book published and a career, it doesn't mean that your life is perfection and that you're not learning and growing yourself.
And the people I want to follow and listen to are the ones who are humble enough to say, I'm still figuring it out, right? And so I don't claim to have medical knowledge or answers. I'm not trying to fix anybody's life, but I am here to say no matter what your situation or circumstance, you can make change. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you feel like you can't get your breath, there are little things you can do to shift your circumstances or at least the way you approach them to get a different outcome. It's not
So
easy.
how long?
It's doable.
And I hope that we can go through some of those. I just wanted to ask you one other question prior to that is you mentioned being diagnosed with a tumor and having facial paralysis. How old was your son and where were you in that journey when you faced that challenge?
So he had just been admitted to his second pediatric psych hospitalization. He was 10. I had to fly out the next day and to give a keynote. And I remember being at the Austin airport and my flight was delayed by 3 hours. I felt guilty for leaving him. I was a hot mess. And I had a migraine and I went to one of those chair massage places in the airport and I put my head in the cradle and I just started to sob. And the massage therapist was so sweet. I told her what was going on and she said, look, take my card when you get home from your trip. I want to come to your house and give you a 90-minute massage treat. So note to self, if you're ever in the Austin airport, cry
Which I am.
uncontrollably and ask for Becky. But she came to my house and gave me a 90-minute massage and found the lump. The massage therapist is the one who found the tumor. And the day we were checking my son out of the psychiatric hospital, it was 2 months, not because he was better, but because insurance, we had begged and pleaded, but that was all we could get. And the day we were discharging him, I was waiting for the nurses to get his meds. And my doctor called and said, I've scheduled you for surgery tomorrow. There's a tumor in your salivary gland. It's traveling towards your brain. We're getting it out.
Wow.
Now.
Wow.
So
and then you had
right
to line up
of it.
care and everything for your son for you to then have your surgery.
Well, I'm incredibly blessed. So I met my husband when Evan was 5 years old. We got married when Evan was 7, and he is an incredible partner. He has a beautiful daughter that's now my daughter, Riley. But we were in a situation where I was fortunate to have support from my mother and support from my husband. And there's so many people who don't have that built-in support system. But I'm telling you, it's what saved my life. And sometimes you have to scrounge and create that support system, even if it's just one other person to just give you a moment to catch your breath. But yeah, I was in the thick of it. It was the worst thing. But I'll tell you how this reframe came about. So my surgeon was trying to comfort me and explain that my facial nerve might not recover, but that I would find ways to have a normal life. And he said, well, let's first deal with the face. How can I make it come back? Like, is there physical therapy? Are there exercises? And he said, I want you to practice gratitude. And I was like, what in the world do I have to be grateful for? My son just got out of a psych hospital. My face is paralyzed. My career is over. I drooled and had a speech impediment. How exactly do you want me to practice gratitude? And I was pretty snarky. And he said, well, I would be grateful your son could get treatment because there's so many kids who can't. I would be grateful that your nerve in your face wasn't severed and that you didn't lose your hearing, because with the extent of the damage you had, most people would lose their hearing. You could be grateful that you have a message that you can communicate to others to make them not feel alone. And when he reframed it like that, I realized I had been looking at everything the wrong way. Up until this point, my resume would have been my eulogy. I was so achievement driven and goal oriented and focused on the wrong things. And for me, this was a wake-up call to say, what is really important to you and which choices are going to reflect that? So it was a wake-up call.
Well, it's one of the things that really stood out when we were learning about you to be a guest on the show is that you're passionate about and you made the decision to trade achievement for alignment, which led to you being on the ranch. Could you share a little bit more about that? How did you trade achievement for alignment in your own life?
Well, it was gradual. Like I said, it started with that camping trip, really thinking to myself, like, there's this whole other world out there that I just told myself I wasn't an outdoorsy person. There's a whole other world out here. And all the research supports how powerful nature is. So when COVID hit and my work went virtual, I could speak from anywhere because I was doing it virtually. And so we bought a travel trailer, a 30-foot travel trailer, and we camped everywhere, like Walmart parking lot, the beach, a mountain, side of the road. And it became such a path to peace because stillness became the goal. Not trying to escape the stillness to fill the time with other things, but to just be still. When Evan was 15, we made a really hard decision. He wasn't safe anymore. We weren't safe anymore. So we had him. We sent him to a therapeutic boarding school in Idaho. So all of a sudden, we had some time during the weekends. Our daughter was with us half the time, her mom half the time. And so we found ourselves with these weekends and we could go anywhere. And that's what camping started to do for me. Stillness wasn't the enemy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to hustle and grind and accomplish more and make more and achieve more. I was trying to simplify and be still. And the difference in my mental health and my physical health was so remarkable that I made a decision that if I wanted to be successful, that's fine, but not at the expense of what was most important. And that was my health and my husband and my kids and my family and my life. And so we went camping for my birthday and had 5 acres of nothingness and said, someday this is what I want. Someday this is what I want. And I'm a firm believer you put something out into the universe and you work hard enough for it, and opportunities present themselves. And this place fell in our lap, and it was totally a God thing. And I could not be more grateful. But yeah, I mean, like I told you after our interview, I have to go give a donkey antibiotics.
Right.
In a million years, that would have not been my life. I would have been writing my next book. And instead, I'm like, I'm going to go take a walk outside and give my donkey meds. It's just, sometimes you can just trade polish. And it sounds so trite to say it like this, and I don't mean it like that, but you can change polish for presence. We're so focused on how we look to everybody and what they think of us, when in reality, everyone's thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about how you're showing up. So just be present. Take some of the stress out of your life by having to be perfect and just be.
Being on that ranch, that's just incredible. So you said you grew up in New Jersey?
Until I was 3, and then we moved to Connecticut, and I was there until I was 8, and then I was transplanted to the surface of the sun. Some people call it Corpus Christi, Texas. I call it the surface of the sun.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was raised for all intents and purposes in South Texas, and yet still camping was not anywhere on my bingo card.
And now you're living on a 20-acre ranch.
I am. And it's in the middle of nowhere, and the only store is a Walmart. And I had to learn our brain needs stillness. We fill it with every second. So like, pay attention to how many times you reach for your phone during the day when you're bored. It's nuts. The average person spends, I'm not exaggerating, 5.5 hours a day on a device like their phone or their iPad. 11 to 14-year-olds spend 9 hours a day. And all of this is coming at a cost, not because we're not giving our brain the chance to be still, which is important in its own right, but we're training our attention for really little short sporadic bouts of attention, to the point where when we don't have that, we feel this vacuum of activity and we don't know what to do with ourselves. And so we fill it with our device. To check in, to check email, to post something, to read something. It's fine if that's part of your life. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But pay attention to how many times you find a device or something so that you don't have to sit still and be quiet. And then sit still for a minute. Set a timer for 1 minute and just sit there. It feels like an eternity. And that's kind of the point, because everybody's running around. We live in what scientists would call a time famine, this chronic feeling of not having enough time to do all the things that we need to do. It's very normal. 80% of working adults feel time poor. But the problem is time is relative. So if you've ever hit your snooze button, you know, it's 9 minutes that flies by like the speed of light. And if you try to exercise, 1 minute feels like it can take forever. Part of the way you change your relationship with time is to allow your brain time to not do anything, just to sit and be still. And you start to realize, okay, it's not a matter of managing my time. It's a matter of managing my attention.
Yes.
And our phone is so dangerous because it shrinks our attention spans.
I like to think of it as giving myself mental blank space.
Yes.
And just having that disconnect. I love going off grid. So for at least 3 times a year, I have several days where I'm straight up off grid, climbing Mount Whitney or whitewater rafting in Idaho in the Frank Marshall Wilderness, like where there is no cell service. Right. Yeah. So
and that's what happened when we started camping. This one time we were in the mountains and there was no cell service, and I panicked. Like at first, what if someone needs to get a hold of me? What if my son, what if my daughter, blah, blah. And I was so anxious until the second day when I realized everyone will find a way to survive. And this
That's
is
right.
so liberating. Like, holy
Yes.
cow, you don't feel guilty for being off grid because there's literally no way to be on the grid.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, that's what I do and love it. So I get what you're saying, but working it into every day. And I'd love some
So
of your
here's how
tips on
you do
this.
this.
Yeah.
I do this. It's on my calendar. Put on your calendar, schedule 10 minutes at
Yep.
a point in your day and call it strategic thinking. Because at work, you should be thinking strategically, not just mired in details all day long. During that time where you're thinking strategically, I don't care if you stare out a window or
Right.
doodle circles on your paper or sit in silence and twiddle your thumbs, you are giving your brain time to rest. The human brain cannot be in a state of intense focus and work for more than 90 minutes without needing a few minutes to rest and reset. And we think we're
That's right.
powering through by, you know what, I just got to knock out this next task. But what we don't realize is we're diminishing our capacity to regulate and to maintain attention and to manage stress reactivity and all of those things. So stillness isn't the enemy, it's a gift. And even if you can only do it for 5 minutes a day, start with a minute a day. And
Right.
ideally, within the first 30 minutes of waking up, do not touch your phone.
Yes. Wouldn't that be
Charge it in a
great?
different room. I know it's your alarm clock. They make them. Sleep with your phone in a different room. Charge it. Go 30 minutes without it. What that does is it gives your brain time to wake up without naturally gravitating toward our negativity bias. You know, our brain is great if our only job is survival, but if we want to enjoy life, our brain doesn't care about that. So what it does is it constantly scans your environment for anything it thinks could hurt it, whether that's a tiger or a snarky email is irrelevant.
Right.
Your body reacts the exact same way. And one of the ways to signal safety to the brain is stillness and to be where you are when you're there. That's why mindfulness is something I resisted because I thought it was froofy, but it's really just biology. And it's one of the greatest things you can do for your physical and mental health is just be where you are when you're there.
Well, you bring up a great point. So I think a lot of listeners of the show are high achievers. I would say probably a lot of type A, and entrepreneurs, driven, making it happen. For me, there was a time where during the workday, so I've always been good about taking breaks through the year, but during the workday, I felt like I can't waste time. That would be wasting time. That would be frivolous or that's airy-fairy or, so if anyone out there has that sort of negative connotation or they feel like they would be wasting time.
I can relate because I am type A, goal-oriented, achievement-driven. If I'm not accomplishing laundry or errands or work or sales or calls or writing or whatever, then clearly I'm doing something wrong until I dug into the research. And it is
Right.
very clear the human brain, in order to work the way it's supposed to, rest is not a reward for productivity, it's the fuel for it. We make the mistake of thinking binging Netflix is rest. While I
Right.
love a good Netflix binge just like the rest of them, real rest involves unplugging intentionally, being deliberate about it. And it feels like you might be lazy or not achieving something. Just because you're not seeing an immediate result doesn't mean your brain's not working in the background. It's solving problems. It's growing back gray matter damaged by stress. It's really healing and using that rest and that space as a way to consolidate information, process information, prioritize information. So what feels like it is being, wasting time is actually building your brain. And it's just this mindset shift. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be achievement oriented. It doesn't mean you don't try for the promotion or care about what you do for a living. But
Right.
your job is not your identity. It is part of who you are. It shouldn't define you. And I think so many people have, especially in my generation, we've grown up thinking, well, of course, you go to work and then you get promoted. And eventually the
Right.
goal is to be a manager and then you want to be an executive. But the problem in that is nobody ever stops and says, is this what I really want? Or am I just following the goals that I think, I should be meeting these check marks along the way? So I think it's really important for people to stop and ask themselves, what does success look like for you if it has nothing to do with money? What would happiness and success look like for you? And reverse engineer your way there instead of just staying incredibly busy and hoping you get to retire someday off in the
Right.
distance. And then you get to be
Right.
happy. It doesn't work like that. And you could
It
get hit by a bus
really
tomorrow.
does not. Correct.
So instead of work my ass off for my whole life till I get to retire, how do you enjoy the life you're in and find a pursuit that you enjoy a career that you enjoy the pursuit and the journey of, not just the destination, because 99% of the time you're on the journey. You might reach the destination, but then there's another journey. So what are the pursuits? What are the hobbies? What are the things that bring you joy? You might not be able to make a career out of them. You can certainly make sure you integrate them into your life. And
That's
that
right.
is so important.
Yeah, you can time block for your passions. I think what I hear you saying is don't allow, as you said, your job to become like 98% of your identity. And then another percent is your familial relationships and 0.5% is you. It's
Right.
You can give an appropriate allotment of time and dedication to your work and make sure you're analyzing, is it commensurate with your career and what you should be bringing to the table? It's interesting when people treat a business like it's their own, but it's not. And I'm sure you and I both have examples, probably firsthand. I know I do, where that bit me in the butt. And then you can time block to make sure that you're writing that book or dancing or painting or traveling and camping or cooking, whatever it is that you love to do. If you can't make your living doing it,
right,
make sure it's in your life and it's giving you your life while you're working something else.
And the devil's advocate in me is thinking, okay, if I'm listening to this discussion right now, I'm thinking, okay, ladies, that sounds really nice, but I'm working 60 hours a week and I've got 2 kids to take care of and they need to be driven places and And I hear you. And you got 10 minutes a day that you can carve out to give yourself some stillness. You don't have to solve the world's problems. You don't need to go to a spa and have a silent retreat. You don't even have to go off grid. But you've got to give your brain some space to just be, even if it's brief moments during the day. The other thing is find ways to integrate what you love into the job you already have. Volunteer for stretch assignments. Like if you love speaking and giving presentations, but that's not your job, go find a team that will give you an opportunity to do that. Or if you're an entrepreneur, right, and you love innovating and creating, right? Tie those things into what you're doing. So it doesn't always have to be an either or proposition. It's not like, well, I can't do what I love because I'm so busy. Therefore, I just stay busy. It's how do I integrate? For example, I love animals. I absolutely love animals. Well, my dog is asleep on my floor right now, and I'll have a stressful conversation or I'll have like crunch deadline with work, and then I'll get on the floor and I'll snuggle my dog because it brings me joy. The mistake a lot of people make is their whole focus is on how do I reduce stress? But the research is interesting and it's counterintuitive. Yes, of course, try to reduce stress anywhere you can, but just as much as reducing stress, increase joy, because increasing joy has the same unintended side effect and it signals safety to your brain. It could be watching a funny cat video. It doesn't mean you have to move, and do a totally different type of career. But you've got to give yourself little release valves throughout the course of the day, and you've also got to have something to look forward to. So put a magnet on your refrigerator of a place you've always wanted to go and plan your trip and have anticipatory joy the entire time you're planning. But you have to have things to look forward to. You've got to give your brain some quiet and some space. And you have to figure out in different parts of your life what is most important and which choices reflect that so that you're not just chasing achievement. You're focused on what really is meaningful to you. And then when I say I stopped chasing achievement and I started chasing alignment, what does that mean? Well, maybe it means I don't have the same revenue goals that I used to. Not because I wouldn't love the revenue, but because it comes at the expense of being on a plane 4 days a week, right? And I can choose, okay, I can keep going that route and that's fine. And I can continue to build a successful business. But I'm also 51 years old and I have a degenerative back disease and I've had double fusion back surgery. And I know that the older I get, the harder it will be to move and stay active. So rather than postponing joy until a later date, I have found that infusing it into your day with your kids, with your animals, with your colleagues, it's also a way to release stress.
Well, I think that's remarkable. And it is something that, as you mentioned, any one of us, regardless of what you're facing, you can find 10 minutes.
Yeah. I remember when Evan was at his worst and we were just exhausted and felt broken, we would put him to bed and watch a stand-up comedian. Not because there weren't real issues, but because your brain can't be in a heightened state of threat and for that long without taking a break. And laughter is one of the best safety signals to your brain.
Absolutely.
Right. So no matter what you're going through, you can find things to laugh at, even if you have to laugh at yourself. And it's so good for your brain and body and nervous system and immune system. It's amazing.
Well, you mentioned actually where everyone could find, well, not everyone, most could find 10 minutes snooze button. I call that a dream killer. The snooze button kills dreams.
Yep.
Disable it. Any of you that are using whatever phone, whatever smartphone you're using as alarm, all of them in the settings,
Yep.
it says disable snooze. Turn it off.
I know. And
Within
and I
3
know,
days, you'll be fine.
well,
There's
but if
10
it
minutes
goes
right
back to
there.
these labels of like me being non-athletic, there are people who are listening and going, "You don't get it. I'm not a morning person." There's no such thing as a morning person. There are people who
That's
prefer early
right.
morning and have more energy, and there are people who prefer late at night and have more energy at that time. But there's no such thing as a morning person. So
Right.
it's an example of postponing misery. And you might say, "Yeah, but that's my favorite time. It's 9 minutes where I just get to." Okay, but what you're also doing is postponing all of the other things you have to do, making you feel more reactive and stressed because now you're running behind.
Right.
If
Right.
you want to snooze, fine, but set the alarm 10 minutes earlier.
Right. But you know what? And I am not a scientist nor a doctor, but the research I've done on sleep is the poor quality. If you do drift back to sleep after hitting snooze, actually makes you feel worse when you wake up than if you just make
Mhm.
yourself get through 3 days or so of not using it.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
had not
that's
read
a
that
fun
research.
thing. On a
Okay, so
Saturday
this
morning,
reminds me of
start
Mel
digging into
Robbins.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
will. But this reminds me of Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, just get
Hmm.
out of bed. Just
That's right.
do it. Drag yourself out. Yeah, I love sleep. You remember when you were kids and your parents were like, "It's time to go to bed. And can I just have 30 more minutes? 30 more
Right.
minutes." Now at
Right.
9 o'clock, I'm like, "Can I please go to bed now?
Can I go now? Yeah.
Can
Would
I
it
go now?"
be too, would anyone know if I went to bed now? Because I want to, and I think I'm
Yeah,
going to. Yeah.
exactly.
But it's pretty remarkable when I think about the concept of achievement for alignment. If someone is out there and they are, by all reasonable definitions, successful, they've
Mhm,
built a career wherever they are, they have achieved certain financial goals, they have the promotions, they have the title, they have recognition, all of it,
mhm.
but they're unhappy. What do you recommend to them? They've built a life now funded by what they're doing
Hmm.
at work. What do you do?
If you can't do it at work, you find ways to learn something new and find out what lights the fire under you. What are some things that are interesting to you? Don't think about it from a place of how do I build a career around it? Watch a YouTube video and learn how to do something and try it. Because when you're stretching your skills and your brain and you're learning new things, you're literally changing the neural structure and function of your brain while you're doing
Right.
that. So you don't have to know your passion. You don't have to have certain hobbies that you already know are perfect for you. Just be willing to suck at something new. Like as an adult, we don't like to be uncomfortable. Imagine if when a baby was starting to walk and the baby fell down the first time and went, "Screw it. Walking's not for me." Of
I'm not a
course,
walker.
I'm not a
I'm not a
walker.
walker person.
Just not a walker person, right? But we get that point in our lives where we're like, this is just who I am. That is
Yeah.
who, right? Like, my mom is 76 years old. She'll be 77 next month. She is still a flight attendant. She started as a flight attendant at the age of 51. She had been a court reporter her whole career. You are never too old to learn and try and experiment. But if you stay static with what you're doing and you're not happy, you're feeding off the misery. Every behavior has a reason. Even no behavior has a reason. So you have to figure out what is most important to you and how do you start making tiny baby micro choices that allow you to experience some of that. So if you want adventure, you don't have to go on an African safari. Go to your local Walmart. I'm telling you, that's an
Right.
adventure in and of itself, but just go with an open mind and people watch. We make it very complicated. And I think we've done a disservice to our kids. Like, find your passion. Okay, well, if your passion is underwater basket weaving, you're probably not going to make a
Right.
career in that. So find hobbies where you can make baskets underwater and give yourself that joy.
Well, you talk about growing with intention, and I feel like that's what you're describing here.
Yeah.
Have the intentionality around it. Allow yourself to grow. Don't be afraid to fall.
Well,
You're
think
not going to
about
be great at
how,
pickleball the first time you play.
but
You know,
not even, what's so interesting to me is that we land somewhere, we look in a mirror 20 years later, and we've just been drifting. And we draw a
Yeah.
bullseye around ourselves and go, oh, okay, well, I guess this is where I am now in my life. What if instead you said, okay, this is me at 51. Where do I want to be at 61? What does 61, what would be magical at that age? Okay, great. Let's work backward and create a 10-year plan to get there, right? And maybe it's just try new hobbies, or new things, make a new friend. One of the interesting things about moving out to the country is I don't know anybody out here. And you're not like on a street with lots of residential neighbors where you just wave as you're coming and going. We're like behind a gate and a quarter-mile driveway, and everybody else is too. You don't go to their property either, right? But I've had to take my own advice and like go join a club that I know nothing about just to meet some people. And it might not be my favorite thing to do, but I met some cool people. So you have to like get out of your own way. And I think we're so tired of being uncomfortable at work. Then when we finally get to be home, we just want to crawl in our little shell and have our routine and have our comfort. And like I said, that's fine until it becomes a cage.
Well, Anne, you brought up early in our conversation about gratitude and how early in your life, the way that you were attempting to use gratitude, and I was also around during those days. When you were talking about that, so many books popped into my mind because there was a spell there in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was just everything was, gratitude, gratitude. And so you realized it was the way you were using it was not giving you the desired outcome. And also, it sounds like you didn't have strong buy-in with it for a certain point. And then you had a doctor that was like, oh, years later, you have a doctor,
Here's your pivot.
Yeah. How about some gratitude? And I'm sure your first response was not to embrace that thought. Then he shifted your perspective. If someone out there is having the same thoughts of like, oh, gratitude, how can they start to have the same pivot and learn the skills to incorporate it in a way that's meaningful?
So one, you're not wearing rose-colored glasses and pretending that the hard stuff doesn't exist. You absolutely acknowledge that. But gratitude builds your capacity to meet it. And what I mean by that is anytime you are even looking for something to be grateful for, it drops cortisol, the stress hormone, by 23%. You don't even have to find anything. Just scanning your environment for something that's good reduces cortisol because it's sending a signal to your brain, time to scan my environment for something that's good. I must not be in danger. A couple of things. One, if journaling isn't for you, I practice gratitude twice a day when I brush my teeth. I'm brushing my teeth anyway.
Right.
Why not attach something to it that I know is going to improve my mental state? So here's the key with gratitude. When you are thinking of something to be grateful for, one, your brain needs novelty. It can't be the same thing every day. My family is happy and healthy. That's wonderful. My husband brought me coffee this morning and I spilled it and he handed me a napkin. I'm grateful he made coffee and handed me a napkin, right? The smaller, the better, but also use the word because for blank because. And what that does is it forces your brain to internalize it and starts offsetting that negativity bias. And you start, without even realizing it, scanning your day for all the things that are right. So if you lead a team meeting, start your meeting with this question: what's right now? And go around the table and have everybody share one thing in their life that's right. You disarm defensiveness, you reduce criticism and skepticism, you increase the odds of collaboration and creativity and problem solving. Because when we're looking for what's right, we're not focused on what's wrong. We're not ignoring it. We're not denying it.
That's right.
But
We're not saying it's not there.
Not there, but there's so much good in this world. And we're so focused on everything that's wrong that I think sometimes we forget that it's a skill to find the good too.
What's right now?
It's so simple.
It is. That's really a powerful question.
And someone else told me the other day, we were talking about how when you struggle, it's really hard and sad. And I don't know how I feel about this statement yet, but the gentleman I was talking to said, anytime you are focused on how hard you have it, you are being self-absorbed and you should be doing something to help somebody else. I find the term self-absorbed kind of harsh, but I get the point where if you have that much time to ruminate about how unhappy you are, then you have enough time to go help somebody else do something. And one of the greatest things that you can do to feel better is to do something kind for someone else, because it gives you a huge surge of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And these are happy hormones and antidepressants that make you feel good. Have to be a big act. It could be holding a door for someone. Little tiny things. When you're feeling down, do something for someone else, and also look for what's right.
I think that's excellent advice. And it is interesting. I like that if you've got enough time. It almost reminds me of something that our grandparents would have said to us.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
Well, it was about
you've
that
got
age.
enough time to
You got enough
be
time.
bored, then you've got enough time to do so. It's very borderline cadre, yet it's very insightful.
Right. Yeah, that's why I said I didn't know how to feel about it at the time, because I'm like, yeah, but you're also allowed to sit in your own feelings, and it's okay to sit in the suck. Right? Like, here's the thing I didn't realize that I wish my 20-year-old self would have known. And it is that we can change our brain and our nervous system on demand. So if you're feeling stressed right now, you can completely change the way your nervous system is functioning by changing the way you breathe, by extending your exhale, breathing in through your belly and extending your exhale. Regulates your entire nervous system. Most of us wait till we're in a high stress situation to do that. But what ends up happening then is your brain starts to associate. Anytime you're trying to escape anxiety, your brain decides, oh, anxiety is really dangerous. I should avoid that. And then we get anxious about our anxiety, right? So start taking 3 deep breaths and extend the exhale when you wake up in the morning, and ask yourself, what's one thing that's right now? It shifts the way your brain works, your body works, and we can train our body. Everything you do right now, for the most part, most of your day is based out of habit, and your brain can't tell the difference between the habits that are helping you or hurting you. I had a woman say, I said, what do you do every day when you get home from work? She said, I have a glass of wine. I said, what would you rather do instead? She said, I want to take a walk. I said, great. Pour an adult sippy cup and go on a wine walk. Take your wine with you. Right? That way you don't feel like you're giving one thing up for another. Eventually, maybe you switch to water. But put your wine in a to-go cup and take it with you on a walk. We make things so hard. You don't have to join a gym and do a plank. Put your wine in a glass and take a walk around your block and see how your mental state changes.
Right.
We make it very
And when you
complicated.
change that mental state, like you were saying, there may come a day where you change the choice.
Exactly. To change, but change is what creates the motivation. So you don't have to make these big, grand gestures. Do one thing a little bit differently. You know, I started dancing and when I unload the dishwasher after my back surgery, I can't bend anymore. And so when I unload the dishwasher, I now do squats while I unload the dishwasher. So it's like I'm just incorporating little things into my day. I take deep breaths while I make coffee. When the microwave is counting down, I used to just stare at the microwave. Now I just focus on, okay, what's going right now? What's one thing I'm happy about? What's one thing I'm proud of? And we started that at the dinner table every day. At the end of the day, what's one thing you're proud of, one thing you're excited about, looking forward to, feel grateful for, fill in the blank. Put your brain in a positive state, and then you realize you start going through your day looking for those things because you know you're going to be talking about it later on.
Right. What role does mainstream media and social media play in all of this?
I was telling my girlfriend this weekend that I was so grateful I was not growing up in the time of social media, because it complicates things. And if you're using social media as a way to build connection and meaningful connection, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. But if you're doing it to escape feeling or having a hard conversation, or you're scrolling because you just need something to distract you, not only are you changing your brain, but your feed adjusts to where you spend the most time. So if you look at one cat video, you're given 10 more cat videos, right? So be very deliberate, because the research has shown that based on the positive or negative content in your feed, that determines what you post, and it feeds itself. So without even realizing it, a horrible story about something awful catches your eye because it's interesting, but you click on it and read it, and now you've created this algorithm, or there's an algorithm that starts to adapt to you. And it's the same thing. We also have an algorithm in our brain, and it notices more of wherever we direct our attention. So pay attention to what you pay attention to. If you're pissed off all the time because people are cutting you off in traffic and doing the wrong thing, and you're being critical and frustrated and judgmental, you're training your brain to be critical and judgmental and frustrated and angry. Doesn't mean you have to offset it by being positive. Doesn't mean you have to love everybody, but at least go from negative to neutral, right? Now, instead of this guy is a jerk, I'm sure he's probably doing the best he can.
That's right. Yes. It's the cliche for me around that is what you focus on expands. So
100%.
if you always
You
focus
find
on
what
the
you look for.
negative, that's right. Yeah. So it is really critical.
But again, it's not saying you shouldn't watch the news or pay attention to reality. That would be absurd. But how much time are you devoting to focusing on what's wrong versus focusing on what's right? And if
What's
there's a
right.
huge imbalance there, then start directing more energy in the direction you want to go, and you'll find yourself there faster.
Well, looking at the changes that you made, where did you move from before you went to the ranch?
So we lived in a suburb of Austin in just a regular neighborhood, and we needed to live there for our kids to go to school and finish school and do all those things. And my criteria was it has to be within an hour drive because my daughter's in Austin. I was like, I have to be able to see you within an hour. But it wasn't anything we had actually really even planned. It was like really one of those universe, throw it out into the universe and see what happens. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that I didn't overanalyze it and talk myself out of it. It would have been really easy to be so practical and be like, it doesn't make any sense for us to move into the middle of the country and still work full time and da 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 da. Something about it felt right in my gut, and I normally don't trust that feeling because it just doesn't feel smart. And this time I finally did, and it's everything I never knew I wanted. Now, we could have moved out here and I hated it.
That's right.
Right? So what? Then we screwed up, you lose some money, you figure it out, you try something else.
And you move again.
And then you move again, and it's not fun, and it's a pain in the ass, and nobody likes to move. But it doesn't have to dictate the rest of your life. I think sometimes treat your life like an experiment and don't do the same thing every single day. Brush your teeth with your other hand. Roll over on a different side of the bed. Like, watch something you've never watched before. Listen to music you don't typically listen to. Treat life like the experiment that it is. Because I guarantee you, when you are lying on your deathbed, you are not going to wish you binged another episode.
Correct. Yeah.
When you're like, what do I wish I would have done differently in my life? Well, it's not like, oh, well, I would have finished Paradise on Hulu faster. No. But it's also okay to binge
wish
watch
I had
it.
stayed up to see one more. Is it cake? Now I'll never know.
No.
Yeah. If it was cake or not. No, I think it's critical to remember that you can move, and if you don't like it, you can move again. I did. I moved to a place that I had dreamt about moving to for decades. Well, at least 15 years. Finally moved I'll leave the town out. And after about 18 months, I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Well, and whether it's...
And I moved back to where I'd been. It took me about 9 months to get everything lined up with life and work and all of that. And guess what? I don't regret it for 1 second. I don't regret it for 1 second.
That's the thing. I think it's easy to look back and say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. So do it now. If you're not happy, stop waiting for the perfect moment to make a move. If you're in a job you can't stand, start looking for a different job. You don't have to quit, but you can slowly start looking before you're desperately trying to find something.
That's right.
And again, you don't have to completely upend your life to make drastic change because over time, these subtle baby changes equal really big results. It's just easier to stick with it when instead of day one, I'm going to run a marathon. It's like walk to the mailbox for a month. Walk to the mailbox
that's right.
for a month. Until it's just automatic and you automatically walk to the mailbox, just do that for a month, right? We can take these baby steps, but it's so overwhelming sometimes, especially, I struggle with depression. And so it's easy for things to become overwhelming, which is why I've had to really work hard at just what's the one next step? What's one baby step? And some days it's just, I'm up, I showered, I'm here. And then other days it's, wow, I have a lot more energy. Let's go try to figure something out. I think the one thing I wish I would have known as a little girl that I still am trying to learn is that everybody is doing the best they can and we're all trying to figure it out.
Right.
Everyone, I have all these young people who are coming to me for mentorship saying, how did you learn it all? I'm still figuring it all out. That's
right.
We're all in it. And at different points in your life, different things are going to take more of a priority that's okay. Let them.
That's right. And it's going to ebb and flow, and you're going to
Yes.
have these different chapters. So for you right now, your son has made it, he's 23, correct?
3. He just
Yeah.
celebrated his birthday and was here with us in Texas. Unfortunately, we've been on a list to get services here for over a decade, and we are still thousands and thousands and thousands of people down the list.
Mhm.
Because he went to school in Idaho, thank God for Idaho's mental health services, because he went to school there, he was a resident and qualified for services. So he
Mhm.
has the care there that I only wish we could have in Texas, but I can't control that. So I can either spend
Mhm.
my time angry and pissed off, or I can find a way to make it work. And I think that's all of our choices, right? There's plenty to be angry about if you choose to be. And there's plenty of
Well,
reasons why starting a business now isn't a good time, or taking
that's
a risk
right.
isn't a good time. There's never a good time.
That's right. There is not ever a good time. Just fill in a blank with anything you're considering, and
And
the
if
best
your
time is
sentence
probably now.
is, "Well, I'll be happy when,"
Right.
cross out the blank, because if you're
Yeah.
not happy where you are, you're not gonna be happy where you're going.
Right. Because you're still going to be there.
Because you take you with you wherever you
Right. So
go.
what is next for you? You have your ranch, you're giving your donkey antibiotics, you've got
Yeah,
Evan in
I'm gonna
a
take a
good
walk this
place.
afternoon, and then I've gotta I own a business, so then I gotta go back and look at a spreadsheet and create a PowerPoint and write a new speech and find new clients and
Mhm.
all the other things that, all the hard stuff, right? So it's not
Right.
that I get to be exempt from all of that. It's finding ways to, instead of waiting for the day when you get to stop working to enjoy yourself, find ways to incorporate joy into your day. And little bits of joy add up to a really great life.
Well, Anne, I want to thank you so much for being here. If people want to connect with you, first off, your links or wherever you're consuming this podcast, it's in the description. But evolvability.com is one of the easiest ways to connect with you. And
Absolutely.
your book is out and available. And I just want to say the title one more time because I love it. Evolvability, Growing Forward When Life Goes Sideways. So if anyone's intrigued and wants to learn more of the techniques and how they can create this for themselves and become more evolvable, then they can get your book.
And a portion of all the proceeds go to the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Well, I want to thank you for being our guest. And
Well,
you're truly inspiring.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
If you're listening to this episode of The Interstate, I hope you'll come back for one of the next. Go ahead in the comments and tell us how evolvable you believe you are currently and what you would like to be. We'll talk to you on the next one.